Chapter 2. Beneath Lantern Light. The Fire Nation Royal Palace was ridiculous. Katara decided this within the first 10 minutes. The hallways seemed endless. Polished red stone gleamed beneath her feet. Massive windows overlooked the capital city. Golden dragons curled around pillars and archways, catching the morning sunlight. Everything was elegant. Everything was expensive. Everything screamed Fire Nation royalty. I hate it. Zuko glanced at her. You've been here for 10 minutes. That's all the time I needed. He snorted. Katara immediately pointed at him. You laughed. No, I didn't. You absolutely did. Can't prove it. She rolled her eyes. Somehow becoming Fire Lord hadn't made him any less annoying. As they continued through the palace, servants bowed as they passed. Officials stepped aside. Guards straightened immediately. Katara noticed something strange. Nobody looked afraid of him. They respected him. The realization caught her off guard. Years ago, this palace had belonged to Ozai. People had obeyed because they were afraid. Now they followed because they wanted to. Zuko noticed her watching. What? Nothing. You were staring again. I was observing. That's a fancy word for staring. Katara groaned. I've been here less than a day and you're already impossible. His smirk widened. Welcome to the Fire Nation. Eventually they reached a large set of doors. A servant opened them. Katara stepped inside and froze. The room was beautiful. Large windows overlooked the city. Silk curtains drifted in the breeze. Fresh flowers sat beside the bed. A balcony stretched across one side of the room. The entire suite was larger than her family's home. Katara slowly turned. This is where I'm staying. Zuko looked confused. Is something wrong with it? It's enormous. It's a guest suite. It's a palace. Also true. She laughed despite herself. For a moment neither looked away. Then an advisor appeared carrying several scrolls. Your Majesty, the council meeting begins shortly. Zuko sighed dramatically. See? This is my life now. Katara smirked. Tragic. I know. A few hours later Katara found herself sitting through what felt like the longest meeting in history. Fire Nation education officials filled the room. Maps covered the tables. Reports were stacked everywhere. Katara was fairly certain she'd seen at least 6 charts explaining other charts. By the end she was convinced Fire Nation officials survived entirely on paperwork. Still, the information interested her. She would be helping teach at Harmony Academy, a school created after the war. Children from different nations learned together there. The goal was simple, to build a future better than the past. Katara liked that, a lot. By the time the meeting ended, her head was spinning with schedules, lesson plans, and enough paperwork to last a lifetime. The moment she stepped outside, she spotted Zuko leaning against a pillar nearby. Almost as if he'd been waiting. Katara narrowed her eyes. Were you waiting for me? No, you were. No, you absolutely were. Zuko pushed away from the pillar. How was the meeting? Horrible. A laugh escaped him. There it is again. What? The laughing. You say that like it's a crime. It should be. His grin widened. As they walked through the palace gardens, Zuko glanced toward her. The Summer Lantern Festival is tonight. Katara blinked. The what? The biggest festival of the season. She immediately became suspicious. You want me to attend? You're here to experience Fire Nation culture. That's your official answer. It is. And the real answer? His eyes glinted. I think it would be entertaining. There it is. What? The honesty. A few hours later, a servant knocked on Katara's door. They carried a carefully folded bundle of clothing. Katara unfolded it slowly. A beautiful Fire Nation dress. Deep crimson with gold embroidery along the sleeves. Elegant. Simple. Surprisingly beautiful. A note rested on top. For the full experience. Zuko. Katara rolled her eyes, then smiled despite herself. When she finally met him in the palace courtyard, Zuko stared for a second. Just a second, then looked away. The reaction was so brief Katara almost missed it. The clothes fit, he said. They were expensive, weren't they? Maybe. Zuko. They suit you. Katara felt oddly warm, which was ridiculous. The weather was probably hotter than usual. That had to be it. The city transformed after sunset. Thousands of lanterns illuminated the streets. Music drifted through the air. Families crowded the marketplaces. Children ran through the streets carrying glowing paper lanterns. Katara stared in amazement. The entire city seemed alive. It's beautiful, she admitted. Zuko looked pleased. Far too pleased. I know. They wandered through crowded streets. Food stalls lined every corner. Merchants shouted cheerful greetings. People stopped constantly to greet Zuko. Shopkeepers waved. Children ran up to him. An elderly woman even pinched his cheek. Katara nearly laughed herself to death. The Fire Lord looked completely horrified. For the first time, Katara truly understood something. People loved him, not because he was Fire Lord. Because he was Zuko. The realization settled quietly in her chest. Before she could think too much about it, an officer approached quickly through the crowd. The man's expression was serious. Immediately, Zuko's smile disappeared. "Your Majesty." The officer leaned close and whispered something. Katara watched the change in Zuko's face. Concern, focus, duty. Fire Lord, not Zuko, not her friend, the ruler of a nation. "I have to go," he said quietly. Katara frowned. "Everything okay?" "Just a council matter." The answer sounded rehearsed. She didn't entirely believe him. But she let it go. "For now." Zuko gestured toward a nearby guard. "He'll stay with you." Katara raised an eyebrow. "I don't need a babysitter." "It's not a babysitter." "It absolutely is. It's security." "Same thing." The corner of his mouth twitched. Then he grew serious again. "Just stay with him, okay?" Something in his tone made her nod. "Okay." For a second his shoulders relaxed. Then he disappeared into the crowd. Katara spent another hour exploring the festival. But somehow it wasn't quite the same. The lanterns were still beautiful. The music still filled the streets. Yet she found herself noticing every time she expected to hear Zuko make some sarcastic comment. Which was annoying. Very annoying. Eventually she returned to the palace. The palace was quiet when she arrived. Most of the servants had retired. The hallways felt peaceful. Katara changed into her sleeping clothes and climbed into bed. Then stared at the ceiling. Sleep refused to come. After nearly an hour, she gave up. Crossing the room, she stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool. The city lights glittered below. Katara rested her arms on the railing. The Fire Nation was nothing like she'd imagined. Nothing like she'd remembered. And somehow that frightened her. Because she was beginning to like it here. A sound from below caught her attention. The palace gates were opening. A familiar figure stepped through. Zuko. He looked exhausted. His formal robes hung loosely around his shoulders. Even from a distance she could see the weight of the day pressing down on him. For a moment she expected him to disappear inside. Instead, he looked up. Directly at her balcony. Katara blinked. Then waved awkwardly. To her surprise, he changed direction. A few minutes later, a knock sounded at her door. Katara opened it. Zuko stood there. "You should be asleep." Katara crossed her arms. "I was about to say the same thing." A tired smile appeared. "I wanted to make sure you got back safely." For a second she simply stared. "You came up here just for that?" He suddenly looked uncomfortable. "I was passing by." "You literally weren't." "I could have been." Katara laughed. A real laugh. One that made him smile too. The palace seemed strangely quiet around them. Comfortable. Easy. "You know," Katara said softly, "you're not very good at pretending you don't care." Something flickered across his face. Gone almost instantly. "Get some sleep, Katara." "You too." For a moment neither moved. Then Zuko nodded once. "Good night." "Good night, Zuko." As she watched him walk away down the hallway, Katara felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Warm, steady, dangerous. And for the first time since arriving in the Fire Nation, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted it to go away.